1916. The Western Front is locked in stalemate, so Britain sends an experimental machine into the mud. It is slow, unreliable, but it changes warfare forever. This is the evolution of British tanks. Early British tanks were built to break trenches and survive machine gun fire. The Mark I entered service in 1916 and became the world's first tank used in combat. Developed by Great Britain during the First World War, it was designed to break the stalemate of trench warfare and cross obstacles that infantry could not overcome. The tank retained a crew of up to 8 men, a commander, a driver, 2 transmission operators, and 4 gunners responsible for operating the main weapons. With a combat weight of approximately 28 tons, it was armed with 2 6-pounder cannons in the male variant, or 5, 303-inch machine guns in the female variant. Armor protection reached up to 12 millimeters, sufficient to stop small arms fire and shell fragments. Powered by a gasoline engine producing about 105 horsepower, it could reach a maximum speed of 6 kilometers per hour. Approximately 150 Mark I tanks were produced, forming the first armored units in the British Army. The Mark I marked the beginning of armored warfare and laid the foundation for all future tank development. The Mark II and Mark III, introduced in 1917, served primarily as interim training tanks. Due to shortages, the Mark II saw limited combat use during fighting in 1917, while the Mark III was used almost exclusively for training. Both models introduced only minor changes to the original Mark I and acted as a transitional step toward the improved Mark IV. The Mark IV entered service in 1917 as an improved version of Britain's early wartime tanks. It was developed to address the mechanical weaknesses and battlefield shortcomings revealed by the earlier Mark I during the First World War. The tank retained a crew of 8 men, consisting of a commander, a driver, 2 transmission operators, and 4 gunners responsible for operating the main weapons. With a combat weight of around 28 tons, it was armed with 2 6-pounder cannons in the male variant or multiple machine guns in the female variant. Armor protection was increased to a maximum of about 12 to 14 millimeters, improving survivability against small arms fire and shell fragments. Powered by a gasoline engine producing approximately 105 horsepower, it could reach a maximum speed of about 6 kilometers per hour. More than 1,200 Mark IV tanks were produced, making it the most widely built British tank of the First World War. The Mark V entered service in 1918 as the final and most refined development of Britain's First World War heavy tanks. It was designed to address the control and reliability issues that limited earlier Mark models. The tank retained a crew of 8 men, consisting of a commander, a driver, a primary gearbox operator, and 5 gunners responsible for operating the main weapons and machine guns. With a combat weight of approximately 29 tons, it was armed with 2 6-pounder cannons in the male variant or multiple machine guns in the female variant. Armor protection remained similar to earlier models, reaching up to about 14 millimeters, sufficient against small arms fire and shell fragments. Powered by a Ricardo gasoline engine producing around 150 horsepower, the Mark V could reach a maximum speed of about 8 kilometers per hour. More than 400 Mark V tanks were produced, and the type played a key role in the final Allied offensives of 1918, marking the peak of Britain's early heavy tank development. The medium Mark A, better known as the Whippet, entered service in 1917 as Britain's first true medium tank. It was developed to complement slow-moving heavy tanks by exploiting breakthroughs and conducting rapid advances behind enemy lines. The tank had a crew of 3 men, consisting of a commander, a driver, and a gunner, all operating in a compact fighting compartment located toward the rear of the vehicle. With a combat weight of approximately 14 tons, the Whippet was armed with 4 Hotchkiss machine guns, providing all-around defensive fire against infantry targets. Armor protection reached up to about 14 millimeters, offering basic protection against small arms fire and battlefield fragments. Powered by 2 Tyler gasoline engines producing a combined output of around 90 horsepower, the Whippet could reach speeds of up to 13 kilometers per hour, making it significantly faster than contemporary heavy tanks. Approximately 200 Whippet tanks were produced, and the type saw active combat in the final stages of the First World War, influencing future concepts of mobile armored warfare. After the war, Britain started rethinking tanks, focusing more on speed and mobility. The Vickers Medium Mark II followed in 1925 as Britain's main interwar medium tank, reflecting introducing lessons from the Whippet and earlier wartime designs. It was designed to combine mobility with better firepower and reliability for peacetime training and doctrinal experiments. The tank had a crew of 5 men, consisting of a commander, a driver, a gunner, a loader, and a machine gun operator. With a combat weight of approximately 12 tons, it was armed with a 3-pounder gun in a fully rotating turret, supplemented by machine guns for close defense. Armor protection reached up to about 8 millimeters, sufficient against small arms fire. Powered by an Armstrong-Siddeley gasoline engine producing around 90 horsepower, the tank could reach speeds of up to 24 kilometers per hour, faster than the heavy First World War designs. Approximately 160 tanks were produced, and the Vickers Medium Mark II helped shape British armored tactics during the interwar period. The light tank Mk6 appeared in 1936 as the standard British light tank of the interwar period, reflecting a shift toward speed, reconnaissance, and battlefield awareness. It was intended to complement medium tanks by performing scouting, screening, and liaison roles. The tank had a crew of 3 men, consisting of a commander gunner, a driver, and a wireless operator. With a combat weight of approximately 5 tons, it was armed with a Vickers 0.5-inch machine gun paired with a 0.303-inch machine gun, optimized for reconnaissance and infantry suppression rather than tank combat. Armor protection reached up to about 14 millimeters, offering limited protection against small arms fire. Powered by a Meadows 6-cylinder gasoline engine producing around 88 horsepower, the tank could reach speeds of up to 56 kilometers per hour, making it one of the fastest British tanks of its time. Over 1,300 light tank A-thick variants were produced, and the type formed the backbone of British armored reconnaissance units at the outbreak of the Second World War. These tanks were made to move slowly with infantry and take heavy hits. The Matilda II appeared in 1939 as Britain's primary infantry tank, reflecting a doctrine that prioritized heavy armor and close cooperation with infantry. It was intended to withstand enemy fire while advancing methodically on the battlefield. The tank had a crew of 4 men, consisting of a commander, a gunner, a loader, and a driver. With a combat weight of approximately 27 tons, it was armed with a 2-pounder gun, effective against early war armored targets but lacking high explosive capability. Armor protection reached up to 78 millimeters, making it one of the most heavily armored tanks of the early Second World War. Powered by twin AEC diesel engines, producing a combined output of around 174 horsepower, the Matilda II could reach speeds of up to 26 kilometers per hour, reflecting its infantry support role rather than maneuver warfare. Approximately 2,900 tanks were produced, and the Matilda II gained a strong reputation during early campaigns, particularly in North Africa. The Valentine entered service in 1940 as a compact and mass-produced British infantry tank, developed using combat experience gained from the Matilda II. It was designed to be simpler and easier to manufacture while maintaining effective armor protection for infantry support. The tank had a crew of 3 men, consisting of a commander, a gunner, and a driver. This reduced crew size allowed for a smaller silhouette, but increased the workload on the commander. With a combat weight of approximately 16 tons, it was armed with a 2-pounder gun in early versions, later upgraded to a 6-pounder to improve anti-tank capability. Armor protection was strong for its class, reaching up to about 65 millimeters. Powered by a diesel engine producing around 135 horsepower, the Valentine was known for its reliability, though its maximum road speed was limited to about 24 kilometers per hour. More than 8,000 Valentine tanks were produced, making it one of the most widely used British tanks of the Second World War, serving on multiple fronts. The Churchill entered service in 1941 as a heavy British infantry tank, designed for close cooperation with infantry in difficult terrain. Its development reflected early Second World War combat experience and the need for a tank capable of crossing obstacles, trenches, and rough ground. The tank had a crew of 5 men, consisting of a commander, a gunner, a loader, a driver, and a co-driver who also operated the hull machine gun. With a combat weight of approximately 40 tons, early versions were armed with a 2-pounder gun, later replaced by a 6-pounder and eventually a 75mm gun to improve overall combat effectiveness. Armor protection was a key feature of the design, reaching up to about 102mm on later variants. Powered by a Bedford gasoline engine producing around 350 horsepower, The Churchill was relatively slow, with a maximum speed of about 25 kilometers per hour, but was valued for its climbing ability and cross-country performance. More than 5,600 Churchill tanks were produced, and the type served throughout the Second World War in multiple specialized and combat roles. Cruiser tanks traded armor for speed, designed to move fast and strike deep. The Crusader appeared in 1941 as a British cruiser tank, designed for speed and maneuverability to exploit breakthroughs and support mobile operations. It reflected the British doctrine that separated fast, lightly armored cruiser tanks from heavily armored infantry tanks. The tank had a crew of 4 men consisting of a commander, a gunner, a loader, and a driver. With a combat weight of approximately 14 tons, it was armed with a 2-pounder gun, later upgraded to a 6-pounder in some versions. Armor protection was relatively light, up to about 40 millimeters, sufficient against small arms and light anti-tank weapons, but vulnerable to medium-caliber enemy guns. Powered by a Nuffield Liberty inline 6 gasoline engine producing around 340 horsepower, the Crusader could reach speeds of up to 42 kilometers per hour, making it one of the fastest British tanks in North Africa. Approximately 5,300 units were produced, and the tank served extensively in the North African campaign, often in large formations to exploit mobility over protection. The Cromwell appeared in 1944 as a British cruiser tank, designed to combine speed, firepower, and protection for mobile operations. It was developed based on combat experience with the Crusader, aiming to improve survivability without sacrificing mobility. The tank had a crew of 5 men, consisting of a commander, a gunner, a loader, a driver, and a co-driver who also operated the hull machine gun. With a combat weight of approximately 28 tons, it was armed with a 75mm gun, supplemented by machine guns for infantry defense. Armor protection reached up to about 76 millimeters, offering better survivability against medium-caliber enemy weapons. Powered by a Rolls-Royce Meteor gasoline engine producing around 600 horsepower, the Cromwell could reach speeds of up to 64 kilometers per hour, making it one of the fastest British cruiser tanks of the war. Approximately 4,000 units were produced, and the Cromwell saw extensive service in northwest Europe, forming the core of British armored divisions in 1944-45. The Comet entered service in 1944 as a late British cruiser tank, developed to address the limitations of earlier cruiser designs. Building on the Cromwell, it was designed to combine high mobility with improved firepower and protection, reflecting changing battlefield requirements late in the war. The tank had a crew of 5 men, consisting of a commander, a gunner, a loader, a driver, and a co-driver who also operated the hull machine gun. With a combat weight of approximately 33 tons, it was armed with the 77mm HV gun, derived from the 17-pounder and capable of engaging contemporary enemy armor more effectively. Armor protection was improved compared to the Cromwell, reaching up to about 102mm on the turret front. Powered by a Rolls-Royce Meteor gasoline engine producing around 600 horsepower, the Comet retained excellent mobility, with a maximum speed of about 51 kilometers per hour. Around 1,200 Comet tanks were produced, and although it saw limited combat at the end of the Second World War, it is often regarded as a direct precursor to Britain's post-war main battle tanks. In the end, Britain combined all roles into one main battle tank. The Centurion entered service in 1945 as a new generation of British tanks, marking the transition from wartime cruiser designs to the concept of a main battle tank. It was developed late in the Second World War to combine the mobility of cruiser tanks with the protection and firepower required to defeat heavy enemy armor. The tank had a crew of 4 men, consisting of a commander, a gunner, a loader, and a driver. With a combat weight of approximately 50 tons in early versions, it was initially armed with a 17-pounder gun, later upgraded to a 20-pounder, and eventually a 105mm gun in post-war variants. Armor protection was significantly improved, with frontal armor reaching up to about 152mm, providing strong protection for its time. Powered by a Rolls-Royce Meteor gasoline engine producing around 600 horsepower, the Centurion had a maximum speed of about 35 kilometers per hour, balancing mobility with heavy protection. More than 4,400 Centurion tanks were produced, and the type served for decades, becoming one of the most influential tank designs of the post-war era. The Chieftain entered service in 1966 as Britain's first true main battle tank, designed with a strong emphasis on firepower and armor protection during the Cold War. It reflected a shift in British tank doctrine toward defeating heavily armored opponents in high-intensity warfare. The tank had a crew of 4 men, consisting of a commander, a gunner, a loader, and a driver, with the driver positioned in a reclined seating position to reduce the vehicle's profile. With a combat weight of approximately 55 tons, it was armed with the powerful 120mm rifled gun, optimized for long-range engagements using advanced ammunition types. Armor protection relied on well-sloped steel armor, providing strong frontal defense for its era. Powered by a Leland L60 multi-fuel engine, producing around 650 horsepower, the Chieftain had a maximum speed of about 48 kilometers per hour, though its mobility was limited by engine reliability issues. Around 1,800 Chieftain tanks were produced, and the type served for several decades with the British Army and numerous foreign operators. In the 1980s, Challenger 1 entered service as Britain's new main battle tank, bridging the transition from the Chieftain to the more advanced Challenger 2. The dates shown refer to entry into service, not the start of development. The Challenger 2 entered service in 1998 as Britain's latest generation main battle tank, designed to build upon the experience gained with the Chieftain and Challenger 1. It was developed to emphasize crew protection, accuracy, and long-term battlefield survivability in modern armored warfare. The tank had a crew of 4 men, consisting of a commander, a gunner, a loader, and a driver. With a combat weight of approximately 62 tons, it was armed with a 120mm rifled gun, optimized for high-precision long-range engagements. Armor protection relied on advanced composite armor, providing a high level of resistance against modern anti-tank threats. Powered by a Perkins CV-12 diesel engine producing around 1,200 horsepower, the Challenger 2 could reach speeds of up to about 59 kilometers per hour. More than 400 Challenger 2 tanks were produced, and the type remains in service as the basis for Britain's modern armored forces. In the 2020s, the Challenger 2 fleet began upgrading to the Challenger 3 standard, featuring a new turret, advanced 120mm gun, and modern digital systems, ensuring Britain's armored forces remain effective in the 21st century. From the first tanks of the First World War to the modern Challenger 2, British armored vehicles have constantly evolved, learning from combat and technological advances. Today, with the Challenger 3 entering production, this legacy continues, combining advanced firepower, protection, and digital systems to face the challenges of the 21st century.